So after Star Trek Picard Season 2, you've got to ask, do we really need the Borg again? And this show says, yeah, as long as it's done right, of course we do. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episode 12, Let Sleeping Borg Lie. And man, I really like this episode. I know I said I was worried about the Borg after Picard, but let's be honest, they couldn't have made them any worse. I think this was a really great Borg episode, and I'll explain why at the end. But yeah, I loved it, it looked great. We got a bit more backstory, the pacing went along, and we got an update on the Diviner, so let's get to it. So Gwen's now got her memories back, and the rest of the gang are watching her on the holodeck as her dad explains the plan for the protostar. So they work out pretty quickly why things went batshit on the Federation comm station last week. But this is where the writing on this show proves how smart it is. They realise that the Diviner is from the future, so everything that's happened for him hasn't happened to them yet. So there's still a sort of time factor element, and if you're asking me, yes, I do think that Dal is still linked to the Diviner in some way, but what this proves is that this so-called kids show has got better writing and logic in it, and plot, and script, and everything else compared to the last 5 seasons of Discovery put together. And yeah, I know season 5 isn't out yet, but come on, what do you think they're going to do? It's going to be a side quest where they have to save the universe. I'll put hard cash on that. Like and subscribe. But anyway, they need to find the weapon, and it's great to see them all working together. And we also get a nice reference to transparent aluminium, because that's how we say aluminium in the UK. And they find the weapon, and because it's from the future, they don't really know how to deal with it. But before they can come up with any ideas, the bloody Borg show up. And that cube looks great and intimidating. I know that the protostar's a tiny ship and the cube has always been a huge ship, but yeah, really give a great sense of scale here. But the thing is, none of the crew actually know who the Borg is, and again, that adds more questions about their backstory, because that would be like not knowing who the Nazis or Osama bin Laden are for these guys, so we still need to find out exactly how they ended up on the prison colony all the way back on episode 1. Now, of course, no one wants to be assimilated. It would ruin your day, your plans, and your future. But again, this is where the show proves how smart it is. They've got a weapon they don't understand and a species who love new tech. So after Janeway's explained who the Borg are, they decide to go on board the ship. And they do it in a pretty unique way. I just mentioned the size of the two ships a second ago. So they fly the protostar into the Borg cube. And how good did it look? Pretty fucking good. That's the answer. It looked great. It had all the original creepiness of the Borg, which, I'll be honest, I haven't really felt since the First Contact film. Voyager overused them to the point that they weren't a threat anymore, but Jank and Pog's reaction in this episode was my first reaction seeing the Borg all the way back in the day as a kid. And they also find out that there's no turbolifts on board, so the Borg are maybe more villainous in the fact that they're those CrossFit enthusiast guys. You know who I'm talking about, and if you don't, it is definitely you. But anyway, to get the knowledge they need, someone has to plug into the collective, and Zero volunteers himself. And seeing him talk to the Borg through the Venculum, I might add, which is a great little Easter egg for Voyager, was pretty great. It reminded me of when Neo was talking to the machines in the Machine City at the end of the third Matrix film. And you know, this isn't exactly going to go well for the crew negotiating with the Borg. And when you've got a ship full of drones, you know they're not going to stay dormant. So they wake up, and the entire action sequence when the gang are running through the cube trying to get away from them, I absolutely loved it. Again, it gave you this, oh, the Borg are scary, and I haven't felt the Borg being scary in years. I also loved the hand phasers that they're using, and I hope they bring them into live action Trek at some point. They're not going to do it in Picard Season 3 because we've already seen the trailer. But yeah, the whole thing of them shooting at the Borg and trying to escape really reminded me of the old PC game Star Trek Elite Forces, if you've ever played that. But Borg be Borging, so while the crew are trying to escape the live action Borg, Zero's negotiations with the collective aren't going that well. They don't just want the weapon, they want the ship and the crew because, you know, Borg. But as always with this show, and this isn't a bad thing, the crew pull together and teamwork and friendship saves the day. And not in the way they do it in Discovery, where they publicly talk about their trauma in front of everyone, because no one does that in real life. Let's be honest. And yet, we didn't get a huge amount of going forward here. This was just a great action episode, but one thing that I've missed out on is what's going on with the Dauntless and the real Janeway. She's drinking tea, trying to find out what happened with the Diviner. And yeah, I said it in the last video, I'm glad John Noble's back, but I'm even more glad that we've got a Tellarite Doctor, because that guy was absolutely hysterical. And we need more Tellarites in Star Trek. I don't know why we haven't really had any, but she's worked out that something's going on with the protostar. The protostar are looking for Starfleet, Janeway's looking for the protostar, the Diviner wants the protostar to go to Starfleet, so all the wheels or the plates are spinning here. And again, this is what I like about this show, it's setting things up and foreshadowing what's going to happen in a brilliant way that most shows don't really do. And I'm not just talking about Star Trek, I'm talking about any show, animated or not. But let's go back a bit to go forward a bit. I said at the start of this video, this was one of the greatest Borg episodes. And I think it's because they kept the Borg simple. They didn't use the Queen. They didn't try and add any history or backstory to them as a species. They were just a terrifying zombie villain army, and that's how they work best. I mean, I know what you're saying. The Queen's cool and she can work well. But when you reduce an army of billions to just one villain, they aren't as scary. And man, they are scary, terrifying in this episode. And I think this might be my favourite episode of Prodigy so far, and that's saying a lot because of the quality of this show. It's all very high, and I say this at the end of all my Prodigy videos, if you haven't watched it and you think you won't get it or it's a kid's show, give it a shot. Some episodes aren't as good as others, but the spirit of Trek is there, and they're building a foundation for this show based on the love of old characters and existing universe stuff, rather than trying to force nostalgia in at every turn. Do you hear me, Discovery and Strange New Worlds? But as always, this is just my opinion. I like where this show is going, I like the pace, I like the plot, and I like the characters. But what do you think of Star Trek Prodigy? Do you glad to see the Borg back? Are they overused? Do you even care? You comment below, or you can DM me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews. If you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video and subscribe. It would mean so much. I'm going to be posting more content all the time. And as always, I'm Al. Thanks for watching.